So spring is here, and you know what that means, right? It's time to go out and do some flower photography. So I thought I'd come out to the park today and see what I can get. It's still a little bit early, so the only thing out right now are these yellow flowers with the green stems. And I thought what I'd do different this year is I thought I'd do some black and white flower photography. Now for gear, today I'm just be shooting with my EM10 Mark II with the 14-42 kit lens. And then I have my Godox TT350 flash, but it can be any flash. And then I have a dumb radio trigger here that just fires the flash whenever I push the shutter button. It doesn't do TTL or anything. So that means I'll have to be shooting in full manual with the flash and with the camera. But don't let that intimidate you. I mean, it's very, very easy. The settings are not that complicated, and I'll just walk you through it. All right, first thing you need to do is put your camera into manual mode, like so on the M. And then we'll come back to those settings for the exposure later. But let's go ahead and put this in the monochrome mode. So in ISO, make sure that's on ISO 200. Set your white balance to auto. It doesn't really matter with monochrome. And then go over here to your picture mode and change that to monotone. And on the EM10 Mark II, they call it monotone. On the other camera, Olympus cameras I have, they call it monochrome for some reason. But and then the next thing we'll do is we'll go to the setting here, S, for sharpness. And we're going to crank that up to +2 because sharpness is really just another level of contrast, just at a much finer level. And then the next item here is the contrast, and we're going to change that to +2. So to crank up the contrast. And then below that we have the F icon, which is for the filter, the black and white filter. And I have a video on black and white photography, but I'm going to set this to green filter, because what that's going to do is going to make everything that's not green darker. Just in a very subtle way, but enough that if there are any differences in color in the flower, particularly flowers that are not green, which is most of them, it'll bring out the subtle shades between the different colors that are within the flowers, I think, a little better. And then for tint, we're just going to leave that neutral. We'll just stay with a straight black and white. We're not going to add any kind of sepia tone or anything like that. All right. Then finally what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the FN2 button, and the default setting for this are your highlights and shadows. So let's go into that. And I'll click that once and you'll see the highlight and shadow come up, and you should see a straight line going across. And we're going to rotate the rear dial here like so until we get the contrast all the way down as low as it can go. I mean the shadows all the way down as low as it'll go. And then for highlights, I'm just going to crank that up 2 notches. And then one more thing we're going to do is we need to go into the menu. And then under shooting menu number 1, you'll see picture mode. So let's go into picture mode, and it should be on monotone now. So we'll scroll over, and then you'll see a little right arrow there. We'll scroll over again. And you'll see in here that we set the contrast and sharpness to +2. We have our black and white filter set to green. But we're going to change the gradation. I think the default is normal or auto. We're going to change the gradation to low key. So what that's going to do, it's going to add a little bit more contrast and crush the shadows or make the background a little bit darker, the shadow areas darker. So those are the settings I use to try to get the punchiest contrast I can. Now the next thing we need to do is change the shutter speed on the manual mode, in manual mode. So we can do that by rotating the rear dial again, and I'm going to crank this all the way up to 250. And then for aperture, you can change by rotating the front dial, and on the kit lens it'll go from 4.4 or 3.5 to 5.6. So whatever it's at now, it doesn't matter. But right next to the aperture on the back of your screen here, you'll see your EV meter. And whatever that says now, just ignore it. Like mine right now is at I'm at 2/50th of a second, f5, and I'm reading a 0.7 EV. So that's telling me that with these settings as they are, ISO 200, 250th of a second, and f5, I'm underexposed by 2/3 of a stop, or minus 0.7. All right, and that's it for settings. And then from here on out, the only thing we have to adjust to take these pictures is we're going to adjust the flash power. In this case, I can go from full power, which is 1/1, to 1/128th power, which is 1/128. And then we just need to adjust the aperture to get to the exposure we need to crush the shadows. So I'm going to try and isolate one of these flowers. I think this one here. If I zoom in a little bit. I think this will be a good shot. Let's try this. That looks pretty nice as it is, but we can do a lot better with the flash. So let's go back into manual mode, and all the settings should still be there where we left them. So let me turn on the flash. Wow, it started raining. I've turned the flash on, and I'm going to set the flash to the lowest power I can, which in this case is minus 1/128. Because I want to get the flash as close as possible to the flower to eliminate the shadows or harsh shadows as much as I can. Because the closer you bring the flash to your subject, the less harsh the shadows will be, but then you have to lower the power quite a bit. Because the idea being, you know, when you take the point of light further away, you know, that'll make the light source smaller, thereby creating harsher shadows. So that's why I like to set the power down as low as I can. Now, on the camera, I'm going to adjust the aperture until I get down to minus 3 EV on the EV meter. So let me go ahead and recompose. And I'm going to dial in my aperture. So I'm raising my aperture. I was at f5. So at f14, the EV meter is reading exactly minus 3. So let me take a picture here and put the flash away. And if we look at that, yeah, it's completely black. So that's great. That means I've completely crushed all of the ambient light. Now all I have to do is add the flash. All right, so I'm going to put the flash as close as I can to the flower like so, without it getting into the frame. And yeah, that's kind of interesting with the flash. Now that I think that exposure looks pretty good, you can see I've crushed all of the light behind the flower, and the only thing really being illuminated is the flower itself. Now we can experiment a little bit. Let's try putting the flash behind the flower. Ooh, yeah, I like how that looks. And then, another thing you can do when you have multiple flowers like this, if you want to soften the light even more, you can put the flash, say, behind another flower like so that it gets diffused as it's going through to illuminate the target flower, your subject. So let's try one like that. And I'll probably have to double the output power because we're going to be losing some of the light. So I'm going to go down. I'm going to try, actually, let's do 4 times power. So I'm going to raise the flash power to 1/32. So I went from 1/128 to 1/32. And let's try that. That's pretty cool. So let me give you another tip is get one of these little foldable chairs. These things are great because I can fold this up like so and carry this with me. It comes in a little sack that I can carry over my shoulder, but yeah, this will go a long way. That way you can sit here and take pictures for hours if you want. This is awesome.